Hello and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching video number 9, Virtual Server Add-ons. This is part of Train Signal Fast Track CBT Video Lab, Microsoft Virtualization, Virtual PC and Server. In this video, first we'll talk a little bit about Windows Management Infrastructure, or WMI. Then we'll go on to take a look at System Center Virtual Machine Manager. I actually have a working version of that I can show you, and we'll see how it might be able to benefit you in using virtualization. Then we'll talk about the virtual server add-ons for MOM and SMS, the Linux virtual server additions, and how to download virtual systems from the internet. So in our scenario with the Blue Crab Food Company, you've got their test and production networks up and running, and you'd like to find out what tools are available to assist you in the growing number of virtual servers. So in this video, you'll explore the variety of Virtual Server 2005 add-ins that are available today. But first, let's talk about the Windows Management Infrastructure, or WMI. WMI is a set of extensions that provide an interface to the operating system. With WMI, applications and scripts can be developed to report on and control the operating system. Many of the add-on applications that report on virtual server performance use WMI. You can, in fact, write your own scripts using WMI. For more information on WMI, you can visit the following link. Let's open that link and just take a look at it. So this is a website obviously put out by Microsoft on the Windows Hardware Developer Central. So it talks a lot about, or it talks to a lot of hardware developers. It talks about drivers, but you can actually go out to the internet. You could buy books on WMI, and you can use WMI in your scripts. The VB scripts we talked about a little bit earlier in scripting. You can use WMI to communicate with the operating system, and a lot of the third-party applications that check on performance of the operating system use WMI. All right, so now let's talk about System Center Virtual Machine Manager. System Center Virtual Machine Manager is a new product from Microsoft, and at the time of this video, it's actually in Beta 1, the very first beta. So it's a pretty rough product, but the point of the product is it'll be a centralized management console for multiple virtual servers. So whereas the virtual server web interface that we've been using manages only a single virtual server at a time, I mean, you can use that web interface, you can select one virtual server, you can do all sorts of stuff there with virtual machines. Then you select another virtual server and you do your tasks there with those virtual machines. So that's how the web interface works now. But with the VMM, or the Virtual Machine Manager, you can actually perform configuration tasks on multiple virtual servers all at the same time. So what this means is you can say, well, I want to take this virtual hard drive and provision a new virtual machine over on server 1, and then at the same time while that's going on, I'm going to provision another one over here on server 2, and while that's going on, I'm going to provision another one on server 3. So you can be rapidly provisioning these virtual machines across multiple virtual servers all at the same time. Just any Windows 2003 server that is running on your network and you have administrator access to, you can remotely install Virtual Server 2005 without any sort of interfaces on that computer. You can remotely install the application that runs Virtual Server 2005 and just make that server into a virtual server, and you can start installing virtual machines on it. So it's pretty cool. It can really do a lot with resource optimization. You can work with loads and try to load your virtual machines evenly, so you could move a virtual machine from one computer to the other. So it's a very interesting product. We scroll down here. It requires the following, which is a lot. And I'll be honest, to get the beta installed, it took me a couple days. And I usually don't have a lot of problems getting most applications installed. But I think because this is a beta, it's still a pretty rough product, and it requires some very specific pieces. It requires Windows 2003 R2. R2 is like Service Pack 1, but it's been redone. It's been remade. So you can get R2 downloaded in a free eval format. So that's a whole new operating system that has to be reinstalled. And then on top of that, you install the WinFX Runtime Beta 2 components, which are sort of the replacement for the .NET framework. These are the Beta 2 versions of those, so you get that. Then you download and install the Windows PowerShell Release Candidate 1 for the .NET Framework 2.0. Get that installed. You download the hardware management components and get that installed. Of course, they have to be for Windows 2003 R2. Get IIS installed, then install the Virtual Machine Manager Beta 1. So this is what I did, and once this VMM is released into production, hopefully it won't be, so complicated and it won't require so many different components individually installed just to get it working. But at this time, it does. So it seems like a very good product. You can find more about it at this website here. Let's click on that. Make sure the link works. Take a look. So this is called the System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And here you can download the beta. You register and then you can download it. And by the way, all those things I talked about over here, all these here, these are all either free downloads or evaluation versions of the download. Let's see, the only one that's an eval is the Windows 2003 R2. All these are free downloads because they're betas or they're just installation pieces. Oh, of course, IIS is actually inside Windows 2003 Server. So here's a website for System Center. It talks about how it performs resource optimization and rapid provisioning and agility of virtual servers. And it goes through the features at a glance. It says it can convert physical machines to a virtual machine. In Beta 2, it will simplify this P2V conversion by using volume shadow copy and block-based transfer technology to create a virtual machine at disk speed. That sounds like a very beneficial feature. Talks about intelligent placement, so it knows which of your virtual machines are loaded the most, and it'll put a new virtual machine wherever there's the least load. So that's pretty smart. Centralized resource optimization. You can perform intra-machine optimizations or inter-machine migrations or both. Rapid provisioning, you have this centralized library of VHD virtual hard drives and ISO images. There's self-service provisioning. You can set up a web interface where certain users can come and create brand new virtual machines on their own if they have the proper privileges. And then host provisioning will identify potential virtual hosts in the enterprise by discovering them in Active Directory. So it's a pretty interesting product. Let's close this out. And let's take a look now at System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So I'm going to go open up my virtual server web-based administrative interface. So what I've done here is I've started up the Blue Crab Food Win Server 1. That's my Windows Active Directory domain controller and DNS server for the bluecrabfood.com domain. Then here I've created a new virtual machine called Virtual Manager. Now this is a member of the Blue Crab Food domain, and it's the Windows 2003 R2 server, the new operating system that I downloaded and installed. And this is the virtual machine where I installed all the different pieces, all these different pieces back here to make the Virtual Machine Manager work. So what we're going to do is we're going to do remote control of the Virtual Machine Manager so that I can show you the application. So I'll open up our Virtual Machine Remote Control client and connect to the Virtual Manager system. I'm going to do full screen on this. So this is the Virtual Manager computer, and it placed an icon here on the desktop called Microsoft System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2007 Administrative Console. Wow, that's a long title for an icon. But let's open this up, and I'll show you what the VMM, as I like to call it, can do for us. Now, the VMM needs clients, of course. You're managing these virtual servers Virtual Server 2005 systems. And so to demonstrate how that works, I had to have a Virtual Server 2005 system. Well, I did have one, but it ran on Windows XP. And what I found out is that Windows XP cannot be a client for the VMM. So all your clients have to be Windows Server 2003 systems to be clients for the VMM. So keep that in mind. And really that does make sense. You don't want to be deploying, systems onto Windows XP workstations. You want to be deploying them onto Windows Server stations. But just keep that in mind if you wanted to try out the VMM. You're going to have a client that is a Virtual Server 2005 system running on Windows Server 2003. Also, keep in mind that you cannot install Virtual Server 2005 inside a server that's running in Virtual Server 2005. I tried to do that, and trust me, it does not work. It knows, the operating system knows inside that virtual machine that it's running inside virtual machine, and it cannot reinstall Virtual Server inside Virtual Server. You wouldn't think it would know, but it knows. So you're going to have a standalone Windows 2003 system to use as a client, a physical 2003 computer to use as a client for the VMM. So with that, this is the System Center VMM Virtual Machine Manager. This is the Beta 1 version of it. And basically it's broken down into 3 sections over here. You can have the virtual machines and hosts, you can have your library, and you can have your tasks. Essentially the virtual machines and hosts, if I expand this out, this is where your managed computers are. This is where the VMM knows what computers are out there and what virtual machines they have on them, and what the state is of those virtual machines. So it's sort of a reporting and management, section for any computers out there running Virtual Server 2005. Now, if a computer over here isn't running Virtual Server 2005, it won't be in the managed computer list. These have to be running Virtual Server 2005, and they have to have the Virtual Machine Manager, the VMM client, installed. There is a VMM client that you can either manually install, or VMM will automatically install it for you. It'll copy it over there using bits and install it for you. And then it will even install Virtual Server 2005 automatically for you. So what I did is I took a physical computer, this physical computer here called Server 2003. I put it in our bluecrabfood.com domain. It was just a regular 2003 server with Service Pack 1. I knew the administrator password, of course, and I put it in the domain, and then I said that I wanted to add a host right here. So I added a host called Server 2003. Well, it says that it's already knows about that machine. But I added that host. I put in my credentials, my administrator username, password, and then it went out there. It installed the client on it for VMM, and then it installed Virtual Server 2005, and voila, I have a new virtual server. Even though I never even had to go to that computer and install Virtual Server, the VMM installed it for me. Then what I can do from here is I can create new virtual machines. See this little link up here, it says create new virtual machines. I can click that and I can create new virtual machines. Now before I do that, let me show you some of the other stuff it can do here. So I can see virtual machine states. I can see which virtual machines are running, stopped, paused, saved, transitioning, failed. I can see the host states, which ones are responding or not. I can see the owners of the virtual machines, the creation dates of the virtual machines, the operating systems of the virtual machines. So I can do sort of reporting here on the different virtual machines. Now the library, this is the library. The purpose of the library is to store objects, as they call them, library objects, that you would want to deploy to your virtual machines. So these could be virtual disks. These could be ISO files that you would use to mount as your CD or DVD drives, or to install the operating system with. These could be hardware profiles. So say I want to create 10 virtual machines that are all the same. They all have 512 megs of RAM. They all have a CD drive that points to Windows XP. They all have a virtual hard disk, of such and such size. So that's a hardware profile. Then I can deploy um, or I can store in here templates. Templates are sort of cookie cutter virtual machines. So you have guest operating systems stored in here, you have virtual disks, you have hardware profiles, and you have templates. Oh, yeah, and you can install or store scripts in the library as well. So there's a lot of different things you can store in this library, and this library is really just a share on this computer, and you can copy things into the library, over the network, and sort of use this computer as your central repository for all your virtual machine objects that you use to create virtual machines, because that's what you're going to be doing with VMM, is rapidly creating virtual machines out there across your farm of Windows servers. So that's what the library is used for. And if we minimize this, I'll show you where the library actually is. If we go to C, Documents and Settings, All Users, Shared Documents, Virtual Machine Manager Library, and you can see here it's a share. If I open this up, there's a VHD directory, and then in here it came with these two virtual hard drives, both dynamic disks. You can tell that because they're 35K and 123K, and it says they're 16 gigabyte and 60 gigabyte hard drives. So these are what it came with. I copied in some other things. I copied in our Blue Crab Food WinXP1 virtual hard drive, the VMC file. I copied in the ISO file for Windows XP Pro, and I added these things to the Virtual Machine Manager library. And if I go to the Share Virtual Manager for this server, you can see here, here's the share name, MSSCVMM library, and it takes me into the same place. So this is going to be my repository for all my VHDs, my ISO files, and some other types of objects. I store those in the library. Then what I do is I create new virtual machines. I select the source for the new virtual machine, which is going to be one of my disks. So maybe I say I want to deploy this blank disk large to use as my base disk drive. And then I'm going to give this computer a name, test VM2. It has to have an owner. I can put in a description here and say next. Then it asks me the type of hardware I want to put on this virtual machine. What's the processor going to be on this virtual machine? I can configure the speed of the processor and the type of processor. Let's configure that one. I can configure the RAM. How much RAM do we want to give this thing? I can configure floppy drive media. I can configure DVD drives. So here I can say use this known image file, Windows XP Pro, which I added to our library. So it's going to share it across the network and allow me access to that image file across the network. It's not going to copy it, it's going to share it. Or I can select to use the host drive. Here I can use configure the network adapter. Enter a MAC there. I can configure resource allocation, how important to the CPU resources, or how important is this virtual machine, and how do I want to allocate the CPU resources of our remote computer. Here I can create new hardware. I can add another SCSI disk on here. So virtual hard disk, SCSI disk, currently expanded to 3 gigabytes. So this is my hardware. And here I can also create hardware profiles, so it could be the same every time. I could have a Windows XP workstation hardware profile, and I could have a web server profile, and they're just created, and I just select them from up here and specify the hardware I want. Here I'll say next. Oh, creating a blank VHD is not supported in beta. So there's some certain functions in beta that just aren't aren't supported. I'm going to go back and let's remove this. Okay, there we go. So now it asks, what do you want to do with this virtual machine? Do you want to store it in the library so you can deploy it later? Or do you want to put this virtual machine on a remote host right now? So let's go ahead and put it on a remote host. And there's some things in the beta that aren't functional, like if you click on more information, nothing happens. But that's what you get for a beta 1. Then I click next and it asks me what server. Well, I only have one server configured available right now with the client on it. So I'll select that server. I'll say next. And what's the path? You know, where do I want to store it on the virtual machine? I'll click browse here. I'm just going to put it in the C drive. And then this is just the verification page. You know, you're creating this new virtual machine called TestVM2. It's owned by this user. It's going to be hosted on this computer, and it's going to be stored in this path. You know, so this is saying, are you sure? And I'll say finish. And then what it does is it puts it in as a task. So this task section down here shows me the state of my task that I've requested. So let's see, this is the completed section, this is the failed section, and here's the running section. So what we're doing is in the running section, and if you go into details, it shows you the different things it's doing. It's creating the virtual machine, it's deploying it using bits, and it's doing setup. So right now it's in the running section. You can see it's 58% completed. And once we're done, you can go over here to the server and right now I already had created one test virtual machine there. And here is our second virtual machine that we are creating right now. You can see the state here is creating versus running. So let's click on this one, and here you can see the summary of the computer down here. You can check on the performance, what's the utilization, disk I/O, and network I/O, and then see if there's any tasks for this virtual machine. So right now you can see it has an error, and that's what that virtual machine is doing. It's got an error. Actually, this is just a test virtual machine. But then what I can do with these virtual machines, since I looked at the performance of them, I can move them to different hosts and I can group them differently, or I can remove them, or I can change their state down here. So I can stop it, pause it, save state, shut down, connect. So with connect to here, I'm using VMRC to connect to that remote virtual machine. So I can go through here to the different virtual machines, you know, and I can look at all virtual machines that are running. And then for the virtual machines that are running, I can choose to stop them no matter what server they're running on. I can choose to connect to them, you know, no matter what server they're running on. I can find any stopped virtual machines on my network, and I could start those virtual machines. You know, so it's a very powerful tool to manage multiple Microsoft virtual servers that are out there on your network. You know, there's no easy way to do these types of tasks from the existing virtual server web interface. So very cool, very useful product, and I can see where it can really save you just a ton of time deploying lots of virtual machines out to multiple virtual servers and then checking on the status of those, you know, moving them from one virtual server to another, connecting to multiple virtual servers, all from a single console. So it's a very powerful product. This is Microsoft System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2007, and this is the beta right now, but I think there's going to be a lot of enhancements, and I think this is going to be a very popular product. All right, so we looked at System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Now let's move on to our next slide. Now let's talk about Microsoft MOM and SMS add-ins for Microsoft Virtual Server. The Microsoft Operations Manager, or MOM, is a performance monitoring, alerting, and reporting application for Microsoft servers and products, as well as many other third-party servers and products. Now, this includes not only the Windows operating system, but also the Microsoft Enterprise servers such as SQL, IIS, Terminal Server, Clustering, SharePoint, Exchange, DFS, ISA, and many other third-party applications. Information on MOM can be found at this website here. And from there, you can also download add-ins for all these other different products, including even third-party applications um, such as other virtual server products. Um, all sorts of third-party applications are available. But for Microsoft products, they break down just about every Microsoft product and technology has its own add-in for MOM. And with MOM, of course, you monitor the performance of these different servers and applications. So say you had a farm of, IIS web servers or SQL servers, you could use MOM to monitor the performance of those over time so that you could create, reports and graphs on their utilization. You could also use MOM for alerting. So if any of the SQL services stops for some reason, you could have MOM, page you or alert you, send you an email. And then, of course, reporting. How many of these SQL servers do you have? What version are they? How much use, do they get? Show me a graph of the hard drive performance over the last year. These are just examples of what MOM can do for these different types of products. So not just the operating system, not just CPU, RAM, and disk, of the physical server, but also of all the different applications. How many email messages do I receive per day on average over the last year? That might be something that the Exchange add-in for MOM could tell you. Now, what they've done recently is they've extended this type of functionality for these applications that MOM provides to virtual server. So MOM can now recognize virtual servers using the Virtual Server Management Pack for MOM. This is a new management pack for MOM that allows MOM to understand the relationships of the virtual servers. So first off, it knows which servers are virtual servers, and it can group those automatically and recognize those virtual servers. So then you can go into MOM and you can see, you can say, show me all my virtual servers, and then show me all the virtual machines that are located on each virtual server, and then show me the performance of my virtual servers, and give me a graph over the last year of which virtual server has been, what's the CPU utilization, let's say, across all the different virtual servers for the last year. Just some examples of what you might be able to do with MOM. So that's the Virtual Server Management Pack for MOM. It's a new add-in for MOM. Um, Basically, it provides these features here. Direct access to the virtual server administrative interface from MOM. So inside MOM, you can go directly to the web page and administer those virtual servers. It provides virtual machine alerts and notifications. Those can be added into MOM. So MOM would know if a virtual machine was hung because the heartbeat of that virtual machine was not responding. MOM would know if a virtual machine crashed unexpectedly, or it could restart those virtual machines for you. So all those types of alerts, MOM could be notified of. It could know if a virtual machine was low on disk space, let's say. So then MOM could take action on these. MOM could alert you and report that to you in some way. MOM can diagram the views of the virtual machine, so it can show you, which virtual machine is on what server. So give you kind of a little tree of, okay, here's the physical server, and then here's the guest operating systems. Here's the virtual machines that are located on that host computer or that, physical computer's hardware. You can do virtual server slash virtual machine reporting, just like I talked about. Give me a graph, of the CPU of all the virtual machines. So you can download a free evaluation copy of MOM and the MOM Management Pack, and it requires Microsoft SQL Server, and you can get an evaluation version of that as well. Installing MOM and using MOM is no simple task. It's a complex and it's also an expensive application if you go to purchase MOM. But for the evaluation and to learn more about it, it's excellent that it's free and it can be downloaded and installed. Um, in my case, I had to do a lot of reading and learning about MOM just to learn to use some of the basics. But it is a great program and it's a very powerful program. And especially if you had a virtual server farm, I can see where MOM would be very very beneficial in reporting the utilization of the virtual servers and the virtual guest operating systems across the whole farm, over time. And that would help you know where to balance those virtual machines and what virtual servers need, upgraded hardware, what virtual machines have had, the most downtime. Just some examples of what you could do. So now let's move on and talk about Microsoft SMS. Microsoft describes their SMS, or Systems Management Server 2003 Release 2, as a comprehensive change and configuration management solution. And that sounds great, but to me what it really does is it does inventory of hardware and software. So it knows every PC, every server, every laptop in the company running Windows. It can tell you all about those, their CPU, RAM, disk, what applications they're running. So it does software inventory as well, every application that's on every computer. So tell me every computer that has Microsoft Word on it and what version. Tell me every Dell computer that's available out there. And tell me the CPU and RAM on those computers. Just examples. It can inventory all sorts of computer devices and applications. Then it can do software rollouts, I call it, which means roll out new applications over the network. So install the new Office 2003 Pro on every computer in the network. It can install patches and software upgrades. So install Service Pack 2 for all those computers. Install patches, this latest security upgrade. It can do that. Uninstall applications, or even upgrade the operating system or install an operating system. SMS can do all that. It can do reporting of all those different things, and then it can do remote control for any of the Windows computers out there. So in general, that's what SMS can do. Now with Service Pack 1 of SMS, which has actually been out for quite a while now, there's now Service Pack 2, and then there's R2 on top of that. So Service Pack 1 has been out for quite a while, but what it offers for Virtual Server is it will show you which Virtual Server 2005 computers are out there on your network and inventory those for you. It will create a new node called Virtual Machines in the SMS Administrative Console. So it knows the relationship between the host operating system and the guest operating system. So it knows what virtual machines are out there. So, if you said, give me a report of all the servers in the company, you would want to report not only of all the physical servers, the host computers, but also all the guest computers. So maybe you have 20 servers, 5 of which are virtual servers, each having 5 different operating system or virtual machines on them. So 5 times 5, that's 25, plus the 15 or 20 other physical servers. So you really have 45 servers, 20 physical and 25 virtual. And so that's the kind of report that SMS would be able to give you, because with this addition, it can recognize the differences between the host operating system and the guest operating systems. Now you can download a free evaluation of Microsoft SMS 2003 R2 and SQL Server, which SQL Server is required, from the Microsoft homepage for SMS, which is found at this web link here. So that's MOM and SMS, both very powerful tools, both commercial tools that if you were to use, you would of course have to pay for. They aren't free tools, but the evaluation of them is free, and the downloads to try them out are free. And I think both of them would be extremely valuable in mid to large size companies that need software control, hardware control, performance monitoring, and alerting for virtual servers and physical servers alike. Now let's talk about the Linux Virtual Server add-ons. Believe it or not, Linux runs very well under Microsoft's Virtual Server. And not just runs, but actually is supported by Microsoft. So here's the list of supported Linux distributions underneath Microsoft Virtual Server. So obviously Microsoft isn't going to support the Linux operating system. If you call in and say, hey, I'm having trouble configuring my network inside Linux, they're not going to help you with that. But they will help you configure the virtual server add-ins inside Linux and help you get Linux installed under virtual server if the problem that you're having is related to virtual server. So they support Red Hat and SUSE Linux of different versions and varieties. But really, you should be able to run just about any Linux operating system under virtual server. And in fact, you can even run some other operating systems besides Linux and Windows under virtual server. Linux guest operating system virtual server editions are available at this web link here. So once you get Linux installed, you can download the virtual server editions, and then you install those inside your Linux operating system, just like you do in Windows. Now, these editions provide improved mouse and video interaction for the Linux guest operating system. Mainly you don't have the problem where your mouse isn't synchronized anymore. Your mouse will be synchronized, and you can just easily move in and out of the Linux host and back to your Windows operating system. And then these editions provide the host services to enable coordinated shutdown, time synchronization, and heartbeat between the Virtual Server 2005 R2 host and the Linux guest operating system. So those are the Linux virtual server editions for Windows Virtual Server that can be installed inside Linux, and there's certain versions of Linux that are supported to run these virtual server editions and run inside Microsoft Virtual Server. All right, now let's talk about downloading of virtual servers or virtual systems from the internet. Now, as a form of trial software, Microsoft is now offering the ability to download fully functioning virtual machines. These are VHD files over the internet. Now, these VHD files are virtual machines designed to demonstrate a Microsoft product or solution. Now, the benefit of this is that you never have to install the software. You just download and add the virtual hard drive to virtual server. At that point, you have a fully functioning application. Now, other software vendors are also beginning to offer VHD files of their applications fully installed as trialware. Now, the Microsoft Virtual Hard Drive product download site is located here. Currently, they offer Windows 2003 R2, Exchange Server 2007, and SQL Server 2005. So let's go take a look at this. So it says run it on a virtual hard disk. The VHD format is the common virtualization file format that provides a uniform product support specification, seamless manageability, security, reliability, and cost efficiency. Here you can download Virtual Server 2005, which we already have installed, and it talks about VHDs. And this is their catalog of VHDs that they have available from their download center. You can download a fully functioning Windows Server 2003, Exchange Server 2007, and SQL Server 2005. So let's give this a try. Let's click on this Exchange 2007. And it does say that registration is suggested. Download size is between 8 and 1.4 gigs. Supported operating systems: Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2003 R2, and Enterprise. This is a pre-configured VHD image that requires Virtual Server 2005 R2 installed on your system. In addition to, VHD or Virtual Server, you'll need additional disk and memory resources. This VHD is pre-configured to use approximately 10 gigs of hard disk space and 512 megabytes of memory. So if you scroll down here, you see that they have it broken down into 3 different files, 2 700 megabyte files, and then a RAR file here. So actually it's an executable part 1, part 2, and part 3. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to download all 3 of these, and then I'm going to show you Exchange 2007 running inside a virtual hard drive that I just downloaded from the internet. So with that, I'm going to pause the video, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I just completed downloading the 3 files. These 3 files listed here, the exe and the 2 RAR files. So I'm going to close this out, and I put them in this folder on my C drive called Exchange 2007 VHD. So if I go in here, I have the application and the 2 RAR files. I'm going to go ahead and run the application. And there's, of course, licensing information here for evaluation of these products. I'm just going to accept that. And then it says press the install button to start the extraction. Use the browse button to select the destination folder from the folders tree. We're just going to take the default, and I'm going to click install. So at this point, it's extracting the files from these two 700 megabyte executable and RAR files to create the VHD files that we need. So this will take just a second because these files are so large. I'm going to pause the recording and I'll be right back. Okay, the extraction of the files just completed, and you can see here we have some new files in our directory. We have a README file. I'm going to go ahead and open that. This tells us how this works. This is Microsoft Exchange 2007 Beta 2. Comes with Microsoft Office Live Communication Server 2005 with Service Pack 1. It's running on Windows 2000 Server, or 2003 Server R2 Enterprise Edition. And it goes down here into, do not distribute this, do not run this in a production environment, don't join it to a corporate network, keep it on an external or a private network. It's for evaluation software, and it's going to cease to function on March 9th, 2008. Let's see, getting started, it comes with a VHD file and a VMC file. We know that's our virtual hard drive, and that's our virtual machine configuration file. If we scroll on down, it talks about how to add it, but of course we already know how to add it. The username and password is administrator and evaluation1 with a capital E. That's good to know. We need to know how to log on to it. And we can close this. You can see here now we have a 3.6 gigabyte VHD file. So it extracted those two 700 megabyte files and somehow magically created a 3.6 gigabyte VHD file. Those must have been really compressed, must have been a lot of white space in that. And then here's our VMC virtual machine configuration file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the path here, and let's go open our Microsoft Virtual Server administration website. Now when I had the video paused this last time, I just went in and I shut down the virtual manager computer here so that I have enough resources to run another virtual machine. I've got my virtual domain controller here for the Blue Crab Food domain up and running still. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a virtual machine just like we've done before. It wants to know the path, the fully qualified path to the VMC file. That's what it needs to know. So I'm going to paste in the path there. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to get the name here of the VMC file. I'm going to copy that, Control C, go back here, and I'm going to do a Control V. Oh, and I need to put in a slash, backslash right there. So that's my VMC file. I'm going to say add. And if we scroll down, let's make sure we have the right hard drive. I'm going to click on the hard drive. And sure enough, it found the path to that VHD that was in the VMC file. It knows that this is configured to have 512 megabytes of RAM, no SCSI adapters. It's connected to the internal network, so it will be on a private network by default. And that's it. So let's give it a try. Let's start up this virtual machine. Brand new Exchange 2007 Beta Edition and Live Communication Server. And let's see if it works. Again, I'm running this on my Windows XP Pro local computer. If this really works, it'll be pretty amazing to be able to download Exchange 2007 and Live Communication Server and just instantly run them on my computer and be able to use a fully working copy of those server applications. So obviously it'll take a second here to boot up this virtual computer. I'm going to minimize everything and let's go start our VMRC, Virtual Machine Remote Control Client. I need to type in the name of this, this server here. I'm just going to copy this, bring it over here, and I'm just going to do Control V and paste it in there and connect. Let's go full screen on this. So you can see here, we're running Windows 2003 Enterprise Edition. This is a evaluation copy. It's preparing the network connections. And in just a second, or a few seconds actually, we will have booted up our new virtual server that we just downloaded from the internet. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause the video for just a second because this will take a minute to boot up. I don't want you to have to sit here and wait. So I'll be right back as soon as it's booted. All right, our Microsoft Virtual Server did load up. It took a little bit of time, but this Exchange 2007 VHD file did produce us a bootable server. So before we log in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit this full screen mode because I found out that the resolution on that Exchange 2007 server is higher than the resolution that I'm recording at here. So the best thing for me to do would be to go back here to the web interface and do remote control through the web interface. And that way I can scroll up and down and left and right here using the web interface. So if I click on this and I go ahead and log on, if you'll remember, the password was evaluation1 with a capital E. Guess the server was shut down last time. All right, so we're logged in here and tells us that this is Windows Server 2003 R2. It comes up with the Manager Server Wizard. I'm going to close that out. Says this is licensed to eval user, and we have 500 megabytes of RAM. I'll close that out. It comes here with a README file. That README file is the same README file we looked at when we downloaded and extracted the images for this. So it's pretty amazing that two 700 megabyte download files, and voila, we created a 3.5 gig fully functional working Exchange Server 2007 with live communication server. So let's go down here. You can see if I scroll left and right, this is a fully functioning version of Microsoft Windows Server 2003. If I go into Start, see here, here's the Exchange Management Console. I can go into All Programs and Microsoft Exchange Server 2007. Here's the Exchange Management Shell and the Exchange Server Help. So let's go ahead and start the Exchange Management Console. Takes just a second to start up. All right. Here's our console. You see over here we have the organization, configuration, mailboxes, clients, hubs, transport, unified messaging. Here's our address list here. If we scroll over to the right, we can add new address lists, new managed folders, new offline address books. If we click on the server configuration, it shows us some of the mailboxes, little additional information. Well, here's an exception, some sort of exception. Here's the toolbox. If you scroll up to the top, you can see here the best practice analyzer. If you click on Microsoft Exchange, here's where you can verify deployment, configure domains. So you can see it's a fully functioning Exchange Server 2007. So what I can do is I can close this out. And my point is not to educate you on Exchange 2007, but just to show you that we really do have a fully functioning Microsoft virtual server running Exchange that we downloaded over the internet. So at this point, rather than gracefully shutting that down, I'm just going to go back to the master status, and I'll scroll down here and I'll just turn this server off. All right, and let me point out before we go on to our slides, that sure, you can share virtual servers with friends and coworkers, but the reality of the licensing agreements with Windows is that you really cannot share any Windows servers or distribute any Windows servers in virtual format to anyone without them having to buy a fully functioning license of that operating system. So you can distribute Linux servers all you want in VHD format. So if you created a virtual server that was a Linux server, installed your custom application on it, and handed it out to all your friends, that's completely legal. But if you did the same thing with Microsoft Windows, it's completely illegal for you to do that. So keep that in mind. Microsoft's allowing people to download these certain applications so that administrators can get a feel for these new applications that they're coming out with. But they're not for distribution. You can't take this virtual machine they gave you and give it to someone else. So that's how that works. And with that, let's go back to our slides. All right, so we just finished talking about Microsoft virtual hard drives that can be downloaded from the internet. Currently, they offer Windows 2003 R2, Exchange Server 2007, and SQL Server 2005. So we just got done talking about that. And now let's talk about Microsoft TechNet Virtual Labs. Microsoft TechNet offers a training program, and maybe training program really isn't the right word. Um, this is called Virtual Labs, TechNet Virtual Labs. And what the Virtual Labs allow you to do is go in on some of the Microsoft new products, the new technologies and new products, and perform some of the new tasks that the new features allow you to perform. So they're sort of ways of allowing you to perform tasks related to new Microsoft features in Microsoft applications. So how this relates to virtual server is you perform these tasks using a virtual machine that's hosted at the Microsoft on the Microsoft network, and you're connecting to that virtual machine using the VMRC ActiveX add-in. So you're going to a web page, and then inside that web page, you register, and then it looks just like our administrative web page, but obviously it's been modified. But it's obviously using the VMRC client inside your web browser. So you're accessing a virtual server located at the Microsoft site somewhere using VMRC over the internet. So these labs are very useful in that you can gain access to these new technologies without ever having to download a VHD. And the reason I tell you about the Microsoft Virtual Labs is not because I'm recommending these as some sort of training program. In fact, really what these are, they're just there to show you some new Microsoft technology. So the Microsoft Virtual Labs, they don't compare at all to a train signal video series. They're not a complete training series on some particular product. In fact, they're just there to show you a certain technology, allow you to try it out. And I show you this because I think this is an innovative way to use Microsoft Virtual Server to allow you to access these virtual machines over the internet using the VMRC. So I'm going to click on the web link down here, take you to the Virtual Labs homepage, and let me show you how this works. So this is the TechNet Virtual Labs homepage. These allow you to quickly evaluate and test Microsoft's newest server products. So if we scroll down, you can see here there's some featured labs on writing scripts, Windows Vista, Exchange 2007, Microsoft Office 2007. And then down here, there's all sorts of different categories of virtual labs that are available. So it's a great way to try out some products, that you might not otherwise be able to use because maybe you can't afford them, or even just getting demo servers or test servers downloaded and installed and working on your own network can be expensive, and it can be many hours of work. So here, using Microsoft Virtual Server, Microsoft is able to demonstrate short little features about their new products, so you can just get a feel for what this new feature or this new product might do. So again, it's not a complete training series. Most of them are about 30 minutes that you get access to the server, and that's it. So I'm going to go in here to the Windows Vista section. And then if I scroll down, let's just check out the first one here. It says Microsoft Virtual Lab Express, exploring new functionality in Internet Explorer 7. So if I click on that, so I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And then what happens is it gives me 30 minutes. And what it does is it builds this lab, and essentially in the background, it's creating like a virtual server, where really it is a virtual server. And this is like a modified VMRC ActiveX add-in here that I can use to access this virtual server remotely over the internet, and then perform this set of, tasks that are in this lab manual. So my point is not to try to get you to use these. My point is to show you that this is all done using virtual server, and I'm actually accessing this using the VMRC. So it takes a second to load this. I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back as soon as the console of the virtual server that we're going to access over the internet comes up. Okay, it just took a few more seconds for that to complete, and now it says you can start your lab. I'm going to click on Start Your Lab, and it opens up this new VMRC. I don't know if this question here looks familiar to you. This is the same question we get when we first, or same question we got when we first connected with VMRC. I'm going to say yes. If I scroll down, notice here it says press right Alt Delete to log on. Well, hey, that's just like in VMRC, right? And then it says there's a lab manual there, so I'm going to say close this window. And here we go. We're already logged on. This is a VMRC window here inside this modified, web page. And so I can go down here, I can do Start, go to Control Panel. The resolution on this is very large, and I don't have access to shrink the resolution to fit it here on the video screen. But over here's the lab manual, and I have 29 minutes left to complete the lab. So here I'm in Control Panel. I can close this out. So it's like I have full control of this machine over the internet. Here I'm currently on Client 1. I can switch to another computer, DC1. That's my domain controller in the lab. And as you can see, I have, full VMRC control over this computer over the internet. So let's close this out. And we'll go ahead and just close out of that and close out of this. And so that was the Microsoft TechNet Virtual Labs. And again, those are just some free applications using Microsoft Virtual Server and using the VMRC over the internet to provide you access to remote virtual servers to demo. Really what they use it for is demoing their new products. So, they try to get people to change over to Windows Vista and Exchange 2007, all these new beta products that are coming out from Microsoft. They try to get people to change over to those by giving them, free access to these servers over the internet and let you learn a little bit about it. So I think it's a great application for Microsoft Virtual Server, and it really shows off, the power of it. And maybe in your organization, you can think of ways to use Microsoft Virtual Server that could really benefit, your organization specifically. I know a lot of companies use it for testing of software patches. A lot of salesmen use it for demoing software that they want to show people. There's so many different ways to use Microsoft Virtual Server. That's just one of the many ways. So we've reached the end of video number 9, Virtual Server Add-ins. In this video, we learned about the Windows Management Instrumentation, or WMI, and how this is used really behind the scenes by applications and scripts to have an interface into the operating system and applications like Microsoft Virtual Server. We saw a real live demo of the System Center Virtual Machine Manager, the VMM. That VMM is used to rapidly roll out new virtual servers and control the load balancing of virtual servers in your organization. So really it's used by people who have at least 2 or more virtual servers in their organization, and many times many more virtual servers than that. But it's a centralized sort of management and rollout of virtual servers with Microsoft Virtual Server 2005. A very powerful application currently in beta, but soon to be out into the free world, into production. Then we learned about how MOM and SMS both have virtual server add-ins. These management packs allow these applications to understand and recognize virtual servers. So they can see that there's the virtual server host, and then there's the virtual server guest operating systems under that. In the case of MOM, it can do performance and reporting and alerting on not only the host operating system, but also the guest operating system. In the case of SMS, it can recognize and report on the host and guest operating systems and perform patches on all those different machines. Then there's the Linux Virtual Server add-ons. We learned how Microsoft supports running Linux under Microsoft Virtual Server, and how they even have virtual server editions for specific Linux operating systems, really Red Hat and SUSE Linux. With those additions, you can synchronize your mouse, you have heartbeat between the host and the guest, and you get a little bit better video performance. Then we learned about how you can download virtual systems from the internet. This is pretty amazing. You can download these 3.6 gig files, which are actually compressed into much smaller files, but they're really used to demo new Microsoft products. Microsoft allows you to demo these by downloading them and then importing them into Microsoft Virtual Server. So there's a ton of different add-ins available for Microsoft Virtual Server out in the world today. These add-ins are very powerful, and I think System Center Virtual Machine Manager, or the VMM, to me is one of the most powerful add-ins available or about to come out for Microsoft Virtual Server. Thank you for watching video number 9, Virtual Server Add-ons.